I just built the perfect starter base in Minecraft Hardcore. Let's start this adventure. First, let's get some wood. I'd like to progress through this part of the game as quickly as possible. Then, with that wood, let's make a wooden pickaxe. Its only job is to get lots of cobblestone. Enough to craft a pickaxe, axe, shovel, sword, and furnace which will be used to cook lots of food. Speaking of food, let's get some. Come here, sheep. I'll use the wool to make a bed, allowing me to sleep away the night when the time comes. I'll also gather some more food which should make my odds of survival much better. All this raw food is kind of useless, so I'll hide myself away in the side of this cliff with a temporary base so that I can cook everything. While that cooks, why don't I tell you about my master plan for this world? So this is a large biome world, meaning that I can eventually do insanely big builds. Before I can do that, let's get the early game out of the way. First, I'd like to pick out a location for my starter base. Then I'll raid every village within 2000 blocks. Next, I'll start building the base, using a mix of iron and diamond tools. And finally, I'll move in and get to villager trading, officially moving me to the end game. Let's begin. Let's look for a base. I believe somewhere in this massive plains biome should be perfect, so I'll use my boat to go along this river looking for the perfect area. While I travel, I'm taking note of anything useful like villages or ruined portals. I looted one of the villages I encountered, getting me lots of hay bales which will suffice as a food source, and my first bits of iron. Iron will become the backbone of my operations in this world until I can unlock diamond tools, but that's a problem for the future. After leaving that village, I quickly found the perfect area for a base. It isn't entirely flat, but it's close enough. I'll go ahead and set up a crafting table, furnace, and a bunch of chests to dump my inventory. Now with that out of the way, let's raid all the nearby villages within 2000 blocks. While I'm at it, I'll also check out all these ruined portals, giving me some extra loot. Then with all of that, it's time to return to base. Now I should probably start building this base. Don't want to be living in a field for 1000 days now, do I? For this base, I'd like to have most of it underground with an above ground section that is a bunch of crop farms. I'd like for this to be focused around a circle that extends down to the underground section of the base, so I'd better start clearing that space. To start, I'll flatten this area a bit. With that area flattened, I'll also go ahead and mark out this circle. I think this is a decent size. I'd like to use deep slate tiles to mark this out, as it's a nice block and should contrast well with other blocks I plan to use. For this, I will need to venture into the depths of this world. The fastest way to do this, of course, is digging straight down. Once I've arrived at the deep slate layers, I will use my trusty water bucket to go back to the surface. As annoying as this looks, it will be faster doing this than using ladders. I'll now head back down, and once I'm at the bottom, I'll break my way into a nearby cave. This cave is inhabited by a group of creepers, so I will quickly kill them, and I'll use this opportunity to mine any iron and diamonds I find, as I'll be burning through my limited supply of them at a rapid rate. This is because at this stage of the game, I outright refuse to enchant my tools until I have villagers. Once I've collected all these goodies, I'll mine up the deep slate I need. Back at the surface, I'll turn that deep slate into deep slate tiles, and I'll also make my first of many diamond tools. I was then rudely interrupted by a pillager patrol, so I dispatched them quickly, and in the final one, their captain dropped a bad omen ball. I'll keep this for later. Now let's get that deep slate in place. I love the texture of that block. Continuing working this surface section, I'd like some farms. I'd like for them to be in sections around this circle, so one for each quadrant. This one will be for wheat, so I'll place some water in barrels, then I'll use this hoe in the grass making farmland. Next, I can plant my first crop of wheat. After completing this section, a wandering trader appeared. It had nothing of value to trade, so it had to die, as I wanted its leads. Now I know you can craft leads with 5 string, but I'm still playing in 1.21.5, so I'd either have to craft them using a slime ball or kill a wandering trader. Which one do you think would be easier in this case? Back to working in the base. To work in these next 3 farm segments, I'll need more deep slate. Using that deep slate, I'll make 3 more sections identical to the first, but with a twist. 2 will be for crops, mainly carrots and potatoes, and the final one will be for sugarcane. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough of each crop to fill the farm, so I'll need to wait for the first harvest to do that. Next, I'd like to make an outer ring around my farms that will be a stone pathway. For this, I'll need even more deep slate. This deep slate will then be used to build the outer ring. Now, I'll need to clear all this extra dirt and stone from the pathway section, allowing me to actually place the pathway blocks I'd like to use. Speaking of those, I need to mine a bunch of stone. I'll then smelt some of it to make these blocks. With that done, I can actually build the path. This will eventually lead down to the underground section of the base. For the next part of the surface section of the base, I'd like to make some pens for farm animals, which means I need more deep slate. This isn't the last time I'll need more deep slate. I'll probably end up using a lot of it for the underground section of the base. I'll use this deep slate to mark the outer boundary of the surface part of this base. I'll also join the boundary to the middle, giving me 16 individual sections. I'll then fill these sections in with dirt, allowing them time to turn to grass. Now I think it's a perfect time to start moving underground. First, let's actually start clearing the space. I'm going to take this circular section down by 6 or so blocks. During this section I ended up breaking several tools. This is a sign of what's to come. I also dig out the stairs at all 4 sides, allowing easy access to this area. I don't want this to drop straight down. I'd like a small path following the walls of this section, so I'll use some extra stone from earlier for that. I'll dig the central section down a bit more so this is easier to see. Then I'll finish marking off this section by placing some deep slate. Now I hope you can see what I'm going for here. Now this progress is great, but I have a slight problem. I can't access my chests anymore. Guess it's time to move them. I'll place them in this section until the storage room is complete. Next, I'd like to finish these walls. I'd like these to have a warm feel, so I'll be using stripped logs, mainly oak and spruce, which means I need to go exploring. First, I'll collect the oak. Good thing there's a forest within 1,000 blocks of base. Once here, I'll only cut down a few trees. I'll then return to base, drop off the oak logs, then it's back to exploring. For the spruce logs, I'll be travelling a great distance to find an ocean. When I arrive, I'll raid the shipwrecks for extra loot and some buried treasure. After exploring for a bit, I found some spruce trees. Before I return home, I raided an extra village, finding some diamonds in the process. Then I made my long journey back to base. I will use this dirt in the middle of my base to grow some large spruce trees. While awaiting them growing, I'll remove the blocks for the walls. Those spruce trees grew really quickly, so I'll chop them down, then I'll start placing the wall. As you can see, these logs contrast a lot with the surrounding blocks, making it look a bit better. It also gives this entire place a nice homely feel. Now let's continue digging this out. The next section will be the storage room, so it will need to go down a fair amount. As I go, I'll place in the deep slate ceiling. Next, I'll continue digging this area out. Ideally, this entire section should be 5 blocks below the ceiling. Once I've cleared that out, I'll start placing the walls in each quadrant. This is so that I have space for chest walls on 2 sides, then an extension for other builds on the other 2. I'll clear some space in the walls for those chests, decorating them as I go. Then I'll start working clearing space for the floor blocks. I'd like to use dark oak for this, which means once again I need to go exploring. So I returned to the ocean from earlier and headed to the north side where I found a dark oak forest. After collecting some dark oak, I started my return journey. On the way home, I found a ruined portal that had an enchanted golden apple, a rare find indeed. When I returned to base, I started placing the floor. First, I placed some spruce planks outlining a mystery project I'll be starting shortly. I then filled in the rest of the floor with an alternating pattern of dark oak planks and stripped dark oak logs. Then once that was complete, I dug out the additional sections on each side of the storage room, which I also decorated. Next, let's work on the floor. This section that has been marked out will be the roof of a villager breeder. Beneath this section of the base, I plan on having a villager trading hall, so this breeder will be the source of the villagers. To start, I'm going to dig this entire thing out. It might look small to you, but that's not true. I had to remove a lot of blocks for this. I then started building the breeder by placing all the dirt for the farmland. Once that was done, I got all the walls in place. Then to wrap things up, I'd like to fill the central section with beds, but for that I need wool. So I'll craft up some shears and I'll head out into the world looking for some sheep. Once that was done, I went in search of sand as I'd like to make the roof of this breeder out of glass. I ended up travelling back towards that ocean from earlier to mine sand from the beach. When I returned to base, I put that glass on to smelt, then while I waited, I installed the beds in the breeder. I then finished the breeder off by adding water, workstations, then I converted all of the dirt to farmland, allowing me to plant some carrots. This will be the villager's food source. Then I added the glass, meaning this villager breeder is complete. Now let's work on getting this breeder working. First, I need a collection area for the villagers. Immediately beneath the farm should be perfect. So I'll start digging my way down, decorating as I go. At the bottom of this ladder, I'll dig out a small room where I can stand and watch baby villagers grow up. I'll also decorate this room using deep slate, dark oak and stripped logs from earlier. At this point I ran out of logs once again, so I went back to that forest from earlier to harvest a bunch more. When I returned, I continued working on the baby villager area by digging out the collection system. This would allow the baby villagers to move from the breeder down and into a holding area. Since this entire section would also be visible, I also decorated it. Then with the completion of that section, it's now time to get some villagers. I'll need 8 for the breeder, so I'll go to nearby villages, put villagers in boats, then I'll pull them back to base with leads. Once I had 8 villagers ready to go, I dropped them into the breeder, which meant it would start to work. After only a few minutes, the first baby villagers passed through the system. While I waited for more villagers to be born, I finally started moving into the storage room by placing the chests. I also went ahead and installed a fence in the upper level as it wasn't exactly OSHA compliant. Then I started moving my items from that temporary chest setup into the storage room. While I was doing all of that, I was also farming spruce trees. Using the resources from that, I crafted a bunch of fences so that on the surface I can finish the animal pens. This would also stop hostile mobs from walking into the base. With that fence installed, I went and collected some sheep. I wanted to do that classic YouTuber thing where you get all the different coloured sheep surrounding my base. These 2 sheep will be the start of that. I collected some more to make the breeding process a bit faster. This will take a while, so I'll go ahead and do a bit of terraforming around the base, making it more mob proof while I wait. I have a lot of villagers now, so let's start using them by building a trading hall. A trading hall is a room where you can keep a large collection of villagers so that you can trade with them. I'll be building two. One will be to get lots of items and the other will be used for making lots of emeralds. Let's focus on the emeralds. I'll start by digging out the room needed for this. I'll be using the string trade from Fisherman, which means I'll need a lot of string, so I'll be building a string duper. I consider string dupers, TNT dupers and gravity block dupers to be completely reasonable, as it allows technical players such as myself to play Minecraft in a slightly different and more engaging way. I want to be completely transparent about this, as I know a lot of the community consider these features as cheating. I for one do not. When you've also spent $25,000 playing Minecraft, you'll feel the same. While I build this string duper, I should also mention that this feature was removed recently, so I used a mod to bring it back. With that string duper online, I can start filling this place with villagers. I got the first one out of the holding area, then I cycled its trade until it gave me string. I locked in that trade, then I moved on to film the rest of the trading hall. Once I had all the villagers in place, I started working on a string transportation system in the middle of the trading hall. This would allow string to move from the duper into my inventory, allowing me to trade more efficiently. This system won't work perfectly until I have packed ice though. Using that system in combination with a neat feature from Tweaker More, I can trade with villagers at an insanely quick rate, allowing me to get lots of emeralds and more importantly experience at the same time. Now that I have a decent emerald supply, let's work on getting unlimited diamond tools and gear and lots of enchanted books. This of course can all be done using villagers, specifically these four professions: armourers, toolsmiths, weaponsmiths and librarians. First, I'm going to clear a space for these villagers. This will be small for now, but it will be expanded later as needed. I'll also go ahead and lock in the librarian trade straight away. This is so that I can turn emeralds into bookshelves, allowing me to craft lecterns as required. With that stuff out of the way, I'm going to begin the long process of filling this trading hall. The goal here is to get almost all of the enchanted books. These will be all the books to make the best gear in the game. The missing ones, I'll get at a future date. This will take quite some time to do, so I'll also go ahead and start working on the weaponsmiths, toolsmiths and armourers. Doing this will allow me to get diamond tools much sooner, which is a good thing considering that I'm quickly running out of resources. I'll focus on levelling up a toolsmith first. This will take a few days of trading due to my limited setup, but come the end I will have levelled this toolsmith from basic stone tools all the way to low level enchanted diamond tools. With that villager complete, let's move on to the weaponsmiths and armourers. After doing all of that, I've basically made a system that converts string into diamond gear. Now I can finally get rid of this early game gear and upgrade to something much better. Next, I'd like to build a small iron farm. Something like this should work perfectly for me as I don't need much iron right now. First, I'll go ahead and capture a zombie. I gave it a name using a name tag from my villagers, then I stuck it in a boat. I then built a wall and roof around it to protect it for later. Next, I'll go and collect 3 villagers from nearby villages as I'll need them for this farm. With those collected, I'll start building the farm. I'm keeping it fairly close to my base so that it will work while I trade with my villagers. Due to the simple design, this was a quick one to build. With that complete, I let the 3 villagers move into the farm, then I spawn proof the area, which means iron golems will spawn in that hole. Next, I'll go ahead and get the zombie. I'm giving it a helmet so that it can survive the sunlight. Then I carefully move the zombie into the farm, which brought it online. I'll let this iron accumulate here while I trade with my villagers. Speaking of trading, let's work on getting some insane endgame gear. Using all these villagers, I can now fully enchant my tools and gear. First, let's work on a pickaxe. I'd like for this to have the following set of enchantments, making it a work pick. In fact, I'll be making 2. One will have Fortune 3 and the other will have Silk Touch. To do this, all I need to do is trade with some villagers, then apply the enchantments using this anvil. Next, I'd like to use the same enchantments on a shovel and an axe. This process is quite experience intensive, so I was constantly trading to replenish my stocks. Next, I'd like to make an insane diamond sword with all of these enchantments, making it perfect for everyday use, mob farms and anything else you can think of. Next, let's focus on enchanting some diamond armour. Each piece will have protection 4, Unbreaking 3 and Mending. I also have a supply of Aqua Affinity, Respiration 3, Depth Strider 3 and Feather Falling 4 books. I'll add those to the appropriate gear. Now that all of those enchantments have been made, I am no longer in the early game. I'm going to go ahead and start collecting all 16 dyes for my sheep since I've finally bred up a pair of sheep for each pen. If I dye them now, their offspring should inherit their colour. To do this, I'll be gathering some of the flowers from this plains biome, getting me all of these dyes. The rest of them will have to be gathered by travelling out into the world. Since this is a large biome world, this will take a few hours. With all of those dyes collected, I'll go ahead and dye all the sheep. Then I'll begin the long breeding process. While I do that, I'm also going to smooth out some of the terrain next to my base as there's a lot of holes which will trap mobs. Plus it looks better. When that's done, I'll add some finishing touches to the bottom section of my base, making it feel nice and homely. Speaking of finishing things up, I'd like to go ahead and train a stonemason and a cleric as they both give decent items. After getting them set up then maxed out, I got some glowstone and quartz from them. I'll use the quartz at the top of the base, providing a bit of contrast against the rest of the build. Then I'll place the glowstone cobblestone behind some leaves below the upper level here, providing an additional light source. At this point I'm going to go ahead and build a bedroom that I'll probably never use. Then 2 super smelters like this one. Manual smelting is annoying. I've left a spare room here for future use. I then spent a bit of time adding some extra quality of life things around the base, then finally I added some decorative bits of diamond armour. Right after I did that, another wandering trader spawned which finally had a packed ice trade, meaning I could make the string duper system work a little bit better. Now the starter base is complete, right? No, you see earlier I placed this lightning rod to protect my villagers from lightning. Instead, let's build a roof, which means I need lots of sand. For this, I'll return to that large ocean from earlier and I'll decimate this beach. While I was here, I decided that I would use black stained glass, so I went ahead and killed a bunch of squid. While doing this, I also killed a drowned that dropped a trident. This will come in handy later. When I returned to base, I smelted all of the sand, then I crafted it all into black stained glass. Then finally I placed this glass roof, finishing off the base for now. Now that this base feels complete, I'd like to enchant that trident. Here's all the enchantments I want to use. While I'm at it, I'll also enchant a bow. After a quick villager trading session, I had all of these weapons enchanted, making me feel unstoppable. With all of this insane gear now acquired, I think it's time to go to the nether. To do this, I'll need obsidian. I found a lava pool near the base, so I dumped a bucket of water on it and collected all the obsidian I'd need. I then took advantage of my trident to travel home faster using a river. When I returned to base, I placed a portal on top of a nearby hill. When I activated it, I came to the realisation that we could now begin phase 2 of my plan for world domination. But that, as always, will need to wait until next time.